You know that instant when your gut drops before your brain can find a reason? That was me on Easter morning, holding my phone like it was a grenade. My mother had just canceled the one tradition she never skipped. No explanation. 3 hours later, she called again by accident. I heard the clink of silverware, a prayer, and the laughter of a family that had erased me from the table without leaving an empty chair. My name is Harper Parker. I am 33 years old, and I analyze risk for a living. At the Crescent Vale Compliance Group in downtown Denver, I am the person they pay to look at a stack of seemingly perfect financial reports and point out the single line where the math is convenient rather than accurate. My entire career is built on the premise that people lie. Numbers hide things, and if something looks too good to be true, it is usually a trap. I live my life by these principles. I drive a sedan with a 5-star safety rating. I have a diversified retirement portfolio. I do not cause drama, and I certainly do not expect it to find me in my own living room on a Sunday morning, but there is a blind spot in every risk assessment, and apparently, mine was my mother. It was Easter morning. The sun was cutting through the blinds of my apartment, hitting the dust motes dancing in the air. I had already laid out my outfit on the bed. A floral midi dress that was conservative enough for church, but fitted enough to remind my high school ex-boyfriend, if I ran into him, that I was doing just fine. I had a bottle of Pinot Noir breathing on the counter and a tray of deviled eggs chilling in the fridge. In the Parker family, Easter was not just a holiday, it was a mandatory corporate retreat. We did not skip Easter. We did not reschedule Easter. If you were in a coma, they would probably wheel your hospital bed up to the dining table and put a napkin in your lap. So when my phone buzzed at 9 in the morning and I saw Mom on the caller ID, I assumed she was calling to remind me to bring the extra folding chairs or to criticize my choice of wine before I even arrived. I slid the icon over and put the phone to my ear. "Happy Easter, Mom. I am leaving in about an hour." "Harper," her voice stopped me cold. It was devoid of the usual frantic holiday energy. There was no background noise of the oven fan blasting or my father cursing at the electric carving knife. It was flat, rehearsed. It sounded like she was reading a statement to the press after a scandal. "Harper," she said again, "we are not doing dinner today." I stood there, one hand hovering over my keys. "What do you mean?" "I mean canceled. Not this year. Harper." My brain tried to process this information, but it was like trying to load a web page with no signal. "Is Dad okay? Did something happen to the house? Is Grant hurt?" "Everyone is fine," she said, and the speed of her answer was the first crack in the facade. It was too fast, too defensive. "We are just overwhelmed. I am behind on some things. I have a deadline for that garden club newsletter, and your father is just tired. We decided to just skip it. It is too much work." I laughed. A short, confused sound. "Mom, it is Easter. The ham is probably already in the oven. I have the eggs. I can come over and help. We do not have to do the full production." "No," she snapped. The sharpness in her tone was startling. Then she dialed it back, smoothing the edges with a terrifyingly fake calmness. "No, sweetie, we just need a quiet day. Just the two of us. You understand, right? You are always saying we need to rest more. So we are resting. But what about Grant and Sienna? Are they staying home too?" "Yes," she said. "Everyone is just doing their own thing. It is a quiet year. Look, I have to go. I have a million things to do if I'm going to get this work done. Love you." Click. She hung up. My mother, who once kept me on the phone for 45 minutes to discuss the color of a neighbor's front door, hung up on me in under 2 minutes on Easter morning. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, the silence of my apartment suddenly feeling heavy and oppressive. The deviled eggs sat in the fridge, 24 perfect yellow eyes staring at the door. I put the phone down on the counter. My analyst brain kicked into gear, instinctively looking for the variable that did not fit. Mom has a deadline. Since when did the Garden Club newsletter supersede the resurrection? Dad is tired. My father wakes up at 5 in the morning to run on a treadmill. He does not get tired enough to skip a meal. Everyone is doing their own thing. My brother Grant lives for free food, and my sister Sienna would never miss a chance to show off her engagement ring to the extended family again. It did not track. The data was corrupted. I spent the next 3 hours pacing. I tried to read a book. I tried to watch the news. I scrubbed a stain on the counter that had been there for 6 months. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they really were just tired. Maybe they were getting old and the labor of hosting 20 people was finally too much. I should be a supportive daughter. I should send flowers. I should enjoy my day off. But the gut rot would not go away. You know that sensation? It is a physical weight in the pit of your stomach, a biological alarm system that evolution gave us to detect predators in the tall grass. I felt hunted, and I was sitting on my own beige sofa. At 12:15, my phone lit up again. I lunged for it, relief washing over me. See, I thought, she is calling back. She felt bad. She is going to say, "Don't be silly. Come over. Bring the wine." The screen said, "Mom." I swiped answer and brought the phone to my ear, a smile already forming on my lips. Okay, I forgive you. I can be there in 20 minutes. I was met with a rustling sound. "Mom?" Fabric rubbing against a microphone, a heavy thud, like a purse being set down on a hard surface, and then the unmistakable, crystal clear sound of a room full of people. I froze. I heard the clink of silverware on porcelain, not one fork, but many. The chaotic, rhythmic percussion of a feast. I heard the scrape of heavy wooden chairs against the hardwood floor, the specific, dragging groan of the chairs in my parents' dining room in Foxridge. "Mom?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She did not answer, because she was not talking to me. She had butt-dialed me. She must have had her phone in her pocket or face down on the table, and the pressure had triggered the call. "All right, everyone, settle down, a deep voice boomed. My father, Graham Parker. "Let's get the prayer started so we can get to this ham before it gets cold." "Grant, stop stealing the rolls." "I'm starving. Dad, let me live," my brother Grant said. His voice was close, loud, jovial. I sank onto my kitchen stool. My knees suddenly made of water. They were there. They were all there. I closed my eyes and focused on the audio, analyzing it like it was a black box recording from a crash site. I could hear the hum of conversation dropping to a respectful hush. I could hear my Aunt Linda's distinctive hacking cough. I could hear the high-pitched giggle of Sienna. "Lord," my father began, his voice taking on that performative baritone resonance he reserved for saying grace. "We thank you for this bounty. We thank you for this gathering of family and friends. We thank you for the blessings of this house and the prosperity of our children. Watch over us, guide us, and keep us united in your light. Amen." "Amen," a chorus of voices replied. At least 15 people, maybe 20. The sounds of serving spoons hitting plates erupted. The pass the potatoes, and oh, look at that glaze chatter filled the line. It was the exact soundtrack of every Easter I had known for 33 years, except I was 3 miles away, sitting alone in a silent apartment with a bottle of wine I had bought for them. My hand gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. I should have hung up. A normal person would have hung up, burst into tears, and thrown the phone across the room, but I did not. I held my breath. I became a statue. I needed to know. I needed to understand why I had been surgically removed from this picture. The phone must have been near the head of the table, near Mom. The audio was clear enough to pick up the conversation closest to her. "Everything looks beautiful, Lorraine," a woman's voice said. I recognized it. Mrs. Gable, the neighbor. Even the neighbors were there. "Thank you, Carol," my mother said. Her voice was light, airy, the perfect hostess. "It was a scramble, but we pulled it off." "Is Harper not making it today?" Mrs. Gable asked. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it. This was the moment the truth would come out. "Oh, you know Harper," my mother said, and I could practically hear the dismissive wave of her hand. She is so busy with that job of hers, high stress. She decided she needed a mental health day. She wanted to be alone. On Easter? Mrs. Gable sounded scandalous. It is her choice, my mother said, her voice dropping to a confidential, faux sympathetic register. We try to respect her boundaries. She can be a little withdrawn. You know how it is. I gasped, a sharp intake of air that hurt my throat. Withdrawn? I called her 3 times a week. I managed their bills. I was the one who drove them to the airport at 4 in the morning. Well, it is a shame, Mrs. Gable said. Pass the gravy, please. I felt tears pricking my eyes. Hot and stinging. It was not just that they excluded me, it was the ease of the lie. She did not even stutter. She painted me as the antisocial workaholic daughter who abandoned the family, while she sat there playing the saint who graciously accepted my boundaries. But then, the conversation shifted. The clatter of plates continued. But a male voice cut through the ambient noise. It was Grant, my older brother, the golden boy, the one who had started 3 businesses and failed 4, yet always drove a better car than I did. So, Grant said, his mouth sounding full, since she is not here, can we talk about the elephant? Grant, not now, my father's voice warned, low, stern. What? Grant said. We are all family here. Carol knows, right? Carol knows everything. I know enough to keep my mouth shut. Mrs. Gable laughed. Seriously, though. Mom, Grant pressed. Did she sign that paper yet? The world stopped. I pressed the phone into my ear until it hurt. That paper? Grant, lower your voice, my mother hissed. The sweetness was gone instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp edge. This is not table talk. I am just asking, Grant said. Defensive but quieter. The timeline is tight. If she drags her feet, she will not drag her feet because she does not need to know the details, my mother said. She will sign it when I give it to her. I told you. I am handling Harper. She trusts me. She signs whatever I put in front of her. I hope so, Grant muttered. Because if that loan doesn't clear by the 1st, we have a problem. It will clear, my father said. Just eat your dinner. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear. I did not press the red button. I just set it down on the granite counter, face up, as the tiny, tinny voices continued to discuss the weather and the texture of the green bean casserole. I stood there, paralyzed. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. Did she sign that paper yet? She signs whatever I put in front of her. I replayed the last decade of my life in my head. The forms Mom handed me when I bought my car. The documents for the family cell phone plan. The time she asked me to co-sign a lease for Sienna's college apartment because my credit was better. The sheer volume of paper I had signed because they were my parents. Because we were a family. Because you do not read the fine print when your mother hands you a pen and says, just here and here, honey. The betrayal was physically painful. A sharp ache in my chest that radiated out to my fingertips. But beneath the pain, something else was waking up. The risk analyst. The part of me that knew how to look at a disaster and calculate the damage. They were not just having dinner without me. They were hiding something. They were moving money. They were using my name. That loan, Grant had said. I looked at the phone. The timer on the call read 4 minutes and 12 seconds. They were still eating. They were still laughing. They had erased me from the table, but they had kept my credit score as a guest of honor. I did not scream. I did not pick up the phone and scream, I can hear you, into the speaker. I did not throw the wine bottle. I reached out and tapped the red button to end the call. The silence rushed back into the room, louder than before. I walked over to my front door and locked the deadbolt. Then I engaged the chain lock. It was a meaningless gesture. They were not coming here, but I needed to physically seal myself off. I needed to draw a line. I went back to the kitchen and stared at the deviled eggs. I picked one up, looked at the paprika sprinkled on top, and dropped it into the trash can. Then I dropped the rest of them, one by one. Thud, thud, thud. I was not Harper the daughter anymore. I was not Harper the sister. I was Harper Parker, risk analyst, and I had just discovered a massive internal breach. I walked into my living room, sat down at my desk, and opened my laptop. I did not cry. I did not text Sienna. I logged into my email. I went to the search bar. I typed one word, document. Then I typed, sign. Then I typed, loan. My finger hovered over the enter key. I took a deep breath. I did not know what that paper was yet, but I knew one thing for certain. My mother was right about one thing. I had been busy. I had been too busy being a good daughter to notice that my family was not a support system. It was a syndicate, and I was about to audit them. I placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter. The glass screen made a sharp, final click against the granite, a sound that felt like a gavel coming down in a courtroom. I did not call back. I did not scream into the receiver. I did not text my brother to ask what loan he was talking about. I just stood there, staring at the matte black case of my phone, feeling as though it were a radioactive isotope that I could not afford to touch again. The silence in my apartment, which had felt lonely only an hour ago, now felt heavy, suffocating, and incredibly specific. It was the silence of a waiting room where you know the diagnosis is terminal, but the doctor has not walked in yet. My brain, usually so good at compartmentalizing, began to overheat. It started dragging up files from the archive, memories I had previously flagged as harmless or misunderstandings. I stood in my kitchen, the sunlight shifting across the floor, and I watched the highlight reel of my own exclusion play out in my mind. I remembered the family group chat from 2 years ago. They had started a new one called Parker Planning to coordinate my parents' 30th anniversary. I had been added 3 weeks after it was created, only after I asked my mother why everyone was wearing matching shirts in a photo I saw on Facebook. "Oh, we thought you were in it," she had said. "Must have been a glitch." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I remembered my 31st birthday. I received a card from my parents 4 days late. It was a generic card from a drugstore, the kind with a picture of a landscape and a pre-printed "Thinking of You" inside. My mother had signed it, "Love Mom and Dad," in hasty, jagged handwriting. No check, no gift card, just a card that looked like it had been bought as an afterthought at a gas station. I compared it to the elaborate, hand-painted scrapbook she had made for Sienna's 26th birthday just 2 months prior. I had told myself it was because Sienna was the baby, the sentimental one, while I was the practical one who did not need glitter and glue. I remembered the cousins' trip to Lake Tahoe last winter. I found out about it while scrolling through Instagram during a lunch break at work. There was Grant, holding a beer, standing next to Sienna and 3 of our cousins. The caption read, "Tradition." I had liked the photo. I had actually liked the photo, thinking it was nice they were having fun. I had assumed it was a spontaneous thing. Now, looking at the black back of my phone, I realized you do not rent a 15-person cabin in Tahoe spontaneously. That takes planning. It takes a group chat. It takes a deliberate decision to not invite the sister who lives 2 states away. I had spent my entire adult life connecting dots that were never meant to form a picture, just to keep the illusion that I was part of the constellation. But the picture was clear now. I was not a planet in their orbit. I was a satellite they only pinged when they needed data. The sun went down. I did not turn on the lights. I sat on my sofa in the dark, the unconsumed bottle of Pinot Noir still sitting on the counter, unopened. I felt a coldness settling into my bones that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It was the chill of clarity. The next morning, my phone buzzed. I looked at it warily. It was a text from Sienna. "Happy Easter." That was it. 2 words and a yellow heart emoji. I stared at the screen. It was 10 in the morning on Monday. Easter was over. The ham was eaten. The prayers were said. The secrets were whispered. And this was what I got. Not "sorry we missed you." Not "Mom said you were sick. Are you okay?" Not "why weren't you there?" Just "Happy Easter" and a yellow heart. The yellow heart felt particularly insulting. It is the heart you send to acquaintances, to colleagues, to people you are friendly with but do not love deeply. It is the heart of obligation. It was sweet, sugary, and completely hollow. It confirmed everything. Sienna knew. She was at the table. She heard the lies about me being busy and withdrawn, and she chose to say nothing. She chose the path of least resistance, sending a delayed text to assuage her own guilt, without disrupting the narrative. 2 hours later, a voicemail notification popped up. It was Mom. I did not answer when it rang. I watched the screen glow and then fade to black. Then, I pressed play on the voicemail, holding the phone away from my ear as if it might bite. "Hi, honey." Her voice was bright, too bright. It had that pitchy sing-song quality she used when she was talking to the pastor or a wealthy neighbor. "Just calling to check in. Did you have a good holiday? I hope you got some rest. We had a quiet day. Just like we planned. Dad is napping now. Anyway, give me a call when you are free. Love you." I felt bile rise in my throat. We had a quiet day, just like we planned. The audacity of the lie was breathtaking. She was not just lying to me, she was rewriting reality. She was betting on the fact that I was alone, that I had no witnesses, that I would never know about the 20 people in her dining room. She was gaslighting me with a smile. If I hadn't heard the butt dial, I would have believed her. I would have felt guilty for not calling her. I would have worried that they were lonely. I deleted the voicemail. I did not delete the text from Sienna. I took a screenshot of it instead. Then, I made a decision. I call it the silence experiment. In my line of work, when we want to test the structural integrity of a system, we remove a load-bearing wall and see if the roof collapses. In my family dynamic, I was the load-bearing wall of communication. I was the one who called every Sunday. I was the one who sent the group texts. I was the one who remembered anniversaries. So, I stopped. I decided I would not initiate a single interaction. I would not text. I would not call. I would not like a post on Facebook. I would simply cease to transmit. Day 1 passed. Nothing. Day 2 passed. Nothing. Day 3, Wednesday, usually. I would call Mom on my drive home from work to hear about her bridge club. I drove home in silence. My hand twitched toward the dashboard screen. A phantom limb reflex. But I kept my hands on the wheel. No one called me. The weekend came. Week 1 was complete. The silence was absolute. It was terrifying how easy it was to disappear. It was as if I had never existed in their lives at all. The realization hit me that my relationship with my parents and siblings was entirely a product of my own effort. It was a one-way street that I had been paving, lighting, and maintaining for a decade, while they just drove on it. By the second week, the silence shifted from painful to clinical. I started treating myself like a case study. I opened a new notebook, a black moleskin I had bought for a journaling habit I never started, and I began to log the data. I did not write about my feelings. I did not write, "I am sad." I wrote down facts. April 5th. Sienna posted a photo of her and Mom at a bridal boutique. Caption: "She said yes to the dress." No invite extended to me. No text informing me she was shopping. April 7th. Grant viewed my LinkedIn profile. No contact made. April 10th. Mom sent a forward of a chain email about a casserole recipe to me. Sienna and 3 aunts. No personal message included. I documented the timestamps. I analyzed the content. I was building a dossier. This was not about revenge. Not yet. This was about defense. I knew my family. I knew that eventually, when they needed something, they would reach out, and when I confronted them, they would twist the narrative. They would say, "You are crazy," or "We called you all the time," or "You are being sensitive." I needed the log to prove to myself that I was not crazy. The log was my anchor in reality. But the thing that kept me up at night, the variable that I could not solve with a simple timeline, was that phrase from the butt dial. Did she sign that paper yet? It echoed in my empty apartment. It bounced off the walls of my bedroom while I tried to sleep. That paper. If they had just excluded me because they didn't like me, that would be heartbreaking. But simple. Families are messy, personalities clash. Maybe I was too boring, too corporate, too serious for them. I could handle being the unloved child. But sign that paper suggested utility. It suggested that my value to them was not just low, it was transactional. It implied that while I was being erased from the dinner table, I was being actively included in something else, something bureaucratic, something financial, something that required a signature. Why would Grant ask that? Why would Mom say she is handling me? I thought about the last few times I had visited home, the casual way Mom would shove a stack of documents across the kitchen counter while I was eating a sandwich. "Oh, Harper, just sign these for the insurance. They changed the policy again. Harper, Daddy needs a witness signature for this contractor thing. Just scribble it here." I had never read them. I trusted them. They were my parents. You do not bring a lawyer to Sunday brunch. Or at least, you shouldn't have to. The paranoia began to itch under my skin. I felt like I had been sleepwalking through a minefield for years. On the evening of the 14th day of silence, I sat down at my desk. The sun had set, and the only light came from the glow of my laptop screen. I opened my personal email account. I went to the search bar. My fingers hovered over the keys. I felt ridiculous, like a conspiracy theorist connecting red yarn on a corkboard. But the risk analyst in me would not let it go. I typed in DocuSign. The results populated. Most of them were from my own work. My lease, my car insurance. I scrolled down. Past the recent ones, I found an email from 6 months ago. The subject line was, "Action required. Please DocuSign. G. Parker Trust Amendment." I remembered seeing it. I remembered assuming it was for my father, Graham, and that he had sent it to me by mistake or just needed a copy. I had archived it without opening. Thinking, Dad handles the trust. He will tell me if he needs me. I scrolled further back. 8 months ago. Subject: Loan application. Co-applicant signature request. Sender: First Mountain Bank via e-sign. I froze. I stared at the date. That was the week I had been promoted. I was so busy I hadn't even cleaned out my inbox. I must have marked it as read or deleted it. Assuming it was spam or a phishing attempt. First Mountain Bank? I didn't even bank there. I went to my trash folder, but it had auto-deleted. I went to my spam folder. Nothing. Then I remembered my all-mail archive. I typed in the bank's name. There it was. Not just one email. 3. Reminder: signature required on loan documents. Urgent. Please complete your portion. Completed. Copy of signed documents. My blood ran cold. The last email was dated 4 months ago. Completed. I clicked on it. My hand was shaking so badly the cursor danced across the screen. The preview loaded. It was a PDF. I saw the header: Home Equity Line of Credit. Secondary Residence. And there, at the bottom of the page, in a digital font that looked vaguely like handwriting, was a signature: Harper L. Parker. I did not sign that. I sat back in my ergonomic office chair, the air leaving my lungs in a rush. I looked at the date of the signature. I checked my calendar. On that day, 4 months ago, I was in Chicago for a compliance conference. I was nowhere near a computer to sign a personal loan. "She signs whatever I put in front of her," my mother had said. But she hadn't even put this in front of me. She hadn't needed to. I looked at the sent to details of the DocuSign envelope. It had been sent to my email address, but there was a typo, 1 letter off. Harper, Parker 89 instead of Harper. Parker, but I had received the copy because my actual email was listed as the CC contact for records. Someone had created a fake email address that looked like mine. Someone had sent the documents to that fake address. Someone had logged in and signed my name. And then, just to be safe, someone had probably deleted the notification from my phone when I visited home that weekend, or banked on the fact that I get 200 emails a day and wouldn't notice a confirmation from a bank I don't use. I closed the laptop, slowly, deliberately. I wasn't just an excluded daughter anymore. I wasn't just a guest who didn't get a dinner plate. I was a victim of identity theft, and the perpetrators were currently enjoying the ham I had paid for, in a house I was apparently helping to finance. I picked up the moleskin notebook. I turned to a fresh page. I wrote down the date, and then I wrote one sentence, pressing the pen into the paper until the tip almost broke. The experiment is over. It had been exactly 30 days since the Easter incident. In the risk management business, silence is rarely a good sign. Silence usually means the breach is deepening, the data is leaking, and the responsible parties are frantically shredding documents before the auditors arrive. My family was no different. For 4 weeks, they had let me drift in the void of my own making, likely telling themselves that Harper is just being Harper, or she is deep in a project. It was a convenient narrative. It allowed them to enjoy their dinners without the buzzkill daughter who might ask uncomfortable questions about why her credit score was being used as a party favor. I was sitting at my desk at Crescent Vale, staring at a spreadsheet that detailed the liquidity ratios of a failing construction firm, when my phone vibrated against the hard laminate surface. It was Grant. I let it buzz 3 times. My pulse did not jump. My hands did not shake. Over the last month, I had calcified. The hurt had hardened into a cold, dense curiosity. I wanted to hear the pitch. I wanted to see how they would try to sell me the bridge they had already burned. I picked up the phone and pressed it to my ear, saying nothing. "Harper? You there?" Grant's voice was a masterpiece of casual concern. It was the voice he used when he needed to borrow $5,000 for a guaranteed investment opportunity. It was warm, brotherly, and completely fabricated. "I am here, Grant," I said. My voice was level, stripped of any inflection. "Hey, there she is," he said, forcing a chuckle that sounded like dry leaves being crushed. "Man, you are hard to reach. Mom is worried sick. You know, she has been saying you have gone completely dark. Is everything okay? You are not having one of your episodes, are you?" I stared at the blinking cursor on my monitor. Episodes. That was their code word for any time I displayed a human emotion that inconvenienced them. If I cried because they forgot my birthday, it was an episode. If I got angry because they borrowed my car and returned it with an empty tank and a scratch on the bumper, it was an episode. "I am fine, Grant," I said. "I have just been busy." "Yeah, well, we are all busy," he said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming a little more patronizing. "But you cannot just ghost Mom like that. She thinks you are mad about something." I told her, "No, Harper is just working, but you know how she gets. So, come on, what is the deal? Are you holding a grudge about something?" The bait was right there. He was dangling it, daring me to snap so he could dismiss me as irrational. He wanted me to yell. He wanted me to cry. I swiveled my chair away from my desk and looked out the window at the Denver skyline. "I am not holding a grudge, Grant. I am holding a recording." The silence on the other end was absolute. It was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence of a calculator processing a new variable. "What?" he asked. The brotherly warmth had evaporated. "Easter," I said. "Mom butt dialed me. About 3 hours after she canceled dinner. I picked up. I listened for 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I waited. I let the information land. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to replay every word he had said at that table. "Oh," Grant said. It was a small, deflated sound. Then, the pause stretched. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. Weighing the options, deny, attack, laugh it off, he chose option 3, minimization. "Okay," he said, letting out a breathy laugh that was supposed to sound relieved. "Okay, so you heard us having dinner. Big deal. Harper, seriously? You are giving us the silent treatment for a month because we ate some ham without you?" "I heard the prayer. Grant," I said. "I heard you ask if I had signed the paper yet. I heard Mom say she is handling me. I heard the lie about me being withdrawn." "You are being withdrawn," Grant snapped, abandoning the nice guy act. "Look at what you are doing right now. You are analyzing a simple family dinner like it is a crime scene. This is exactly why Mom canceled. She knew you would make it stressful." She canceled because she didn't want me there, I said. She didn't want the pressure, Grant shouted, his voice cracking. She wanted a nice, easy holiday without having to walk on eggshells around you. You are intense. Harper, you sit there and you judge everything. Mom just wanted to relax. Is that a crime? Does she not deserve one afternoon off? Pressure? I repeated the word, tasting the absurdity of it. I bring the wine. I help clean up. I drive you guys home. What pressure? Grant? The pressure of my existence? See? This is it, Grant said, his voice dropping to a condescending murmur. You are twisting things. You are being hypersensitive. It was a last-minute decision. We didn't want to drag you all the way out there just to sit around and hear about Dad's gout or my business. We were doing you a favor. A favor, I said flatly. Yes, a favor. We know you work hard. We thought, hey, let Harper have a day to herself. Why do you have to make everything about you? Why does everything have to be a personal attack? It was masterful. In under 2 minutes, he had taken the fact that they lied to me, excluded me, and discussed using me for financial gain, and turned it into a story about how I was selfish, difficult, and ungrateful for their benevolence. He was gaslighting me with such fluidity it was almost impressive. Grant, I said, cutting through his monologue, I heard you ask about the paper. What paper? The line went dead silent again. This was the danger zone. The dinner was emotional. The paper was legal. He knew the difference. Nothing, he said, too quickly. Just some insurance stuff for the house. Dad was worrying about the premiums. I thought maybe you could look at it since you are the expert. That is all. So why did you ask if I signed it? I meant, did you see it? Did Mom send it to you? You are obsessing over semantics. Harper, you are missing the big picture here. And what is the big picture? The big picture is that you are hurting Mom, he said, playing his final card, the guilt card. She is really upset. She feels like she cannot do anything right in your eyes. Do you really want to be the reason she is crying on a Tuesday afternoon? Over a plate of ham? Come on, Harper, be the bigger person. Just call her. Apologize for being distant. Let's move on. For the sake of the family peace. The family peace. There it was. The ultimate weapon. The holy grail of the Parker household. Peace. But looking out at the city, at the rigid steel structures that held up the skyscrapers, I realized something I had never seen before. In my family, peace did not mean harmony. It did not mean resolution. Peace meant compliance. Peace meant I played my role, signed the papers, absorbed the insults, and smiled for the photo. Peace was a hostage situation where I was the only one with a gun to my head. My computer pinged. A notification slid onto the screen. It was a text message from Sienna. Grant says you guys are talking. Please do not make a big deal out of this. Harper, serious. The family has a lot going on right now and we cannot handle a Harper meltdown. Just let it go. I stared at the words. The family has a lot going on right now. It was an accidental confession. Sienna, in her attempt to silence me, had confirmed that there was a situation. A lot going on that I was excluded from knowing but expected to support. They were circling the wagons, and I was not inside the circle. I was the fuel for the fire. I looked back at the phone in my hand. Grant was still breathing on the other end, waiting for me to fold, waiting for me to say, okay, I am sorry. I overreacted. Grant, I said. Yeah? He sounded hopeful. I am not going to apologize. What? I said I am not going to apologize, and I am not going to call Mom and pretend I enjoyed my day off. You lied to me. You all lied to me. Collectively. Deliberately. We were protecting. Stop, I said. My voice was not loud, but it was hard enough to cut glass. Do not use the word protect. You were managing me, and I am done being managed. So what? You are just going to cut us off? Over this? I am setting a boundary, I said. If you lie to me again, about dinner, about a document, about anything, I am done. I will not answer the phone. I will not come to Christmas. I will not play the game. You are being ridiculous, Grant spat. You are going to blow up the whole family over nothing. If the family blows up because I asked for the truth, then it was not built very well to begin with, was it? You are unbelievable, he said. Fine, sulk, be a victim, see how far that gets you. Call us when you are ready to act like an adult. He hung up. The disconnection tone hummed in my ear for a second before I lowered the phone. I sat there, waiting for the wave of regret. I waited for the conditioned response, the panic that said, "Oh no, I made them mad. I have to fix it." But it did not come. Instead, I felt a strange, vibrating clarity. They had not apologized, not once, faced with the undeniable proof of their deception. Grant had attacked my character, questioned my sanity, and demanded my submission. They did not want me. They wanted the version of me that was convenient. They wanted the version of me that signed things without reading them. I looked at the text from Sienna again. We cannot handle a Harper meltdown. I picked up my mouse. I did not reply to Sienna. I did not call my mother. I opened my email client. I went to the settings menu. I created a new filter. Sender includes Mom, Dad, Grant Parker, Sienna Parker, Action, Skip Inbox, Action, Apply Label. I stared at the text box for the label name. I thought about naming it trash or lies or toxic, but those were emotional words. I needed to be analytical. I needed to treat them like what they were. Background noise, distortion, interference that prevented me from seeing the signal. I typed in the word static. I clicked Create Filter immediately. The unread email count in my inbox dropped by 2. A forwarded joke from my father and a just checking in email from Mom vanished from my sight. Tucked away into a folder that I would only open when I had the emotional bandwidth to process raw data. I leaned back in my chair. The office was quiet. The silence was no longer a void. It was a shield. They wanted me to let it go. They wanted me to move on so they could get back to the business of using me. But they had made a critical error. They thought I was emotional. They thought I was sensitive. They had forgotten what I actually did for a living. I did not let things go. I tracked them. I pulled up the spreadsheet I had started 2 weeks ago. The one with the dates, the times, and the text of the butt dial. I added a new entry, May 2nd, 14:30. Phone call with Grant, confirmed knowledge of exclusion, subject attempted gaslighting tactics, minimization, character attack, confirmed existence of the paper, but denied nature of document. Sienna confirmed situation via text. Hostility level high. I saved the file. I still did not know exactly what that paper was. I knew about the loan application I had found with the forged signature, but Grant's panic suggested there might be more. Or perhaps the loan was the tip of the iceberg, and the paper he asked about at dinner was something new. Something they needed me to sign now to cover the tracks of what they had forged then. I would find out, but I would not find out by asking them. I would not give them the chance to lie to me again. I was done playing the daughter. It was time to play the auditor. And the first rule of auditing is, you do not tell the subject under investigation that you are watching them. You let them think they got away with it. You let them think you are sulking and being a victim, safely tucked away in your apartment. While they continue to operate, I unlocked my phone and sent a single text message to Sienna. Okay, I will let it go. It was the biggest lie I had ever told, and as I pressed send, I felt the first true surge of power I had felt in 33 years. June arrived, and with it came the day I turned 34. In previous years, the Parker birthday protocol was established and rigid. My mother would call at exactly 9 in the morning, singing a version of Happy Birthday that was always slightly off-key. My father would get on the line second, asking if I had checked the oil in my car. In the evening, there would be a dinner, not a party, but a dinner, lasagna, usually, this year. The sun rose and the sun set, and my phone remained silent. I went to work. I analyzed a portfolio for a mid-sized tech firm that was bleeding cash but hiding it in R&D expenses. I ate a salad at my desk. I came home. I sat on my couch with a glass of water, watching the digital clock on the cable box tick away the minutes of my birth date. 9 o'clock. Silence. 10 o'clock. Silence. 11 o'clock. Silence. The static folder in my email remained empty. They had not even automated a greeting. At 2 minutes before midnight, my phone buzzed once, a single vibration against the coffee table. I picked it up. It was a text from Grant. Happy B-Day. 3 letters. No emoji. No punctuation other than the period, which felt less like grammar and more like a door slamming shut. He had waited until the absolute last legal second of the day to do the absolute bare minimum required to say he had not forgotten. It was a text sent not to wish me joy, but to absolve himself of guilt. I did not reply. I watched the clock turn to 12:00. I was 34, and I was officially an orphan with living parents. The erosion continued. It was not a landslide. It was the slow, steady weathering of a cliff face. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through social media during a commercial break of a show I wasn't really watching. The algorithm, cruel and efficient, served me a post from my mother's account. It was a carousel of photos. The location tag read, Silver Creek Cabins. I stopped scrolling. We used to go to Silver Creek when I was a teenager. It was the family spot. I swiped through the pictures. Photo 1. My parents standing on the deck, holding mugs of coffee, wrapped in flannel. They looked cozy. They looked peaceful. Photo 2. Grant grilling steaks, laughing at something off camera. Photo 3. Sienna and her fiancé, Evan, sitting by the fire pit. Photo 4. A group shot. My parents, Grant, Sienna, Evan, and the Gables, our neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Gable were sitting in the Adirondack chairs that, historically, belonged to the children. I zoomed in on the table in the background. There were 6 place settings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The math was perfect. They didn't need an extra chair. They had replaced me with the neighbors. I looked at the caption, making memories with the people who matter most. Family weekend. Blessed. I felt a sharp sting behind my eyes. But I did not cry. The tears were drying up. The shock was metabolizing into something harder, like concrete setting in a mold. July came. The heat in Denver was oppressive, the kind that radiates off the pavement and distorts the air. I found out about Sienna's engagement party on a Tuesday. While waiting in line for a latte, I wasn't looking for it. I was just tapping through Instagram stories to kill time. Sienna's face popped up. She was wearing a white cocktail dress, holding a glass of champagne. Behind her was a banner. She said yes. It was a video. The camera panned around the room. I recognized the venue. It was the country club where my father played golf. The room was packed. I saw cousins I hadn't seen in 3 years. I saw my high school biology teacher. I saw the mailman. The camera swung past my mother, who was holding court in the center of the room, looking radiant in navy blue. She was gesturing expansively, playing the role of the proud matriarch. "We are just so happy," her voice tinny through the phone speaker. "It is going to be the wedding of the century." I was the maid of honor at Sienna's first wedding, the practice marriage that lasted 18 months. I had held her hair back when she threw up from nerves. I had written the checks to the vendors when my parents forgot their checkbook. Now, I was watching her celebration on a 3-inch screen. Standing between a stranger in a suit and a college student with a backpack, I didn't even get a pity invite. I didn't even get the lost in the mail excuse. I was simply erased. But the final blow, the one that truly severed the nerve, happened in August. It was a Sunday, the day of the week formerly known as Family Dinner Day. My mother posted a single photo. It was artfully composed, lit by the golden hour sun streaming through the dining room window. It showed the table set for dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The caption read, "Sunday blessings. My heart is full, blessed with my whole world at this table." I looked at the chairs, Dad, Mom, Grant, Sienna, Evan, and in the chair that used to be mine, the one closest to the kitchen, The one I sat in so I could jump up and refill water glasses, sat a dog. It was a golden retriever puppy, looking at the camera with wide, adorable eyes. A napkin was tied around its neck. My mother had tagged the people in the photo: Graham Parker, Grant Parker, Sienna Parker, Evan Miller, and on the dog, a tag: Maple. I stared at the screen. I knew they had gotten a dog. I had seen it in the background of other pictures. But to see it sitting in my chair, to see it tagged as part of her whole world while I was conspicuously absent, it was almost funny. It was so villainously on the nose that a scriptwriter would have cut it for being too heavy-handed. Maple. I put my phone down on the table. Something in my chest unclicked. It was the sound of the final latch releasing. For months, I had been asking, why? Why are they doing this? Why don't they love me? Why am I the outsider? I looked at the dog in my chair, and the question changed. Oh, I thought, I see. They didn't hate me. Hate requires energy. Hate is a passion. This wasn't hate. This was utility. I was a spare part. I was a battery. When the battery is dead, you throw it in a drawer and you put a new one in. Or if the battery is problematic, you remove it so it doesn't corrode the device. They had replaced me with a dog because the dog offered exactly what they wanted from me: uncritical adoration, presence without opinion, and silence. I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt cold. I felt the precise, antiseptic clarity of a surgeon scrubbing in for an amputation. If I was not family, then I was a stranger. And if I was a stranger, then their access to my financial data was not a family quirk. It was a crime. I opened my laptop. I did not go to Facebook. I went to the credit bureau portal. I had placed a fraud alert on my file back in May, but I hadn't done a deep dive since then. I had been too afraid of what I might find. Now, the fear was gone. I pulled my full report, 50 pages of numbers and codes that defined my trustworthiness to the world. I scrolled past the student loans I had paid off. I scrolled past my car lease. I stopped at the inquiries section. There was the usual stuff: the check from when I moved apartments, the check from my credit card company for a limit increase, and then there was a line item from 4 months ago, late March, 2 weeks before Easter. Hard inquiry. FMB Mortgage Lending Services. My heart gave a single, hard thump. FMB, First Mountain Bank, the same bank from the forged loan documents I had found in my email. But this was a hard pull. A hard pull means someone is applying for new credit. It knocks your score down a few points. It requires authorization. I looked at the date, March 28th. I checked my calendar for March 28th. I was at work. I had not applied for a mortgage. I already owned a condo. And my mortgage was with a national bank, not a regional lender like First Mountain. I picked up my phone. It was Sunday, so the bank was closed. I had to wait until Monday morning. The night passed in a blur of sleepless calculation. I wasn't tossing and turning. I was strategizing. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, I called First Mountain Bank. Thank you for calling First Mountain. This is Jessica. How can I help you? Hi, Jessica. My name is Harper Parker. I am looking at my credit report, and I see a hard inquiry from your bank on March 28th. I did not apply for a loan with you. Okay, Ms. Parker, let me take a look. Can I have your social security number? I gave it to her. I heard typing. Okay. Yes, I see the inquiry here. It looks like it was generated in connection with a HELOC application. A home equity line of credit? I asked. On which property? Let me see. It is listed for a property on Elm Street in Foxridge. Foxridge, my parents' house. I do not own that house, I said. My voice was steady, professional. That is my parents' house. Oh, Jessica said. Well, your name is listed as a co-applicant. I did not apply for this, I said. I did not sign anything. Was the loan approved? I cannot give out details on the account status without verifying some more security questions. Since you are saying you did not originate it, Jessica said, her voice tightening. She was going into protocol mode. I understand, I said. But Jessica, you have a hard inquiry on my credit for a house I do not own. If I did not sign it, who did? It, well, it looks like it was a joint application with a Graham and Lorraine Parker, and the inquiry was run to verify debt-to-income ratios for the secondary guarantor. Secondary guarantor. Jessica, I said, is there an active loan in my name right now? Ms. Parker, I really cannot discuss the account details if you are alleging fraud. I would need to transfer you to our fraud department. Do not transfer me yet, I said quickly. Just tell me this. Was the inquiry for family assets or was it specifically for me? It is linked to the family asset profile, she said, sounding confused. But your credit was the primary factor for the favorable rate. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Jessica. That is all I needed. I hung up. They hadn't just forged my signature. They had used my credit score, my pristine 800-plus score that I had built by eating ramen and driving a 10-year-old car, to get a better interest rate on a loan for their house. They were leveraging me. I was not a daughter. I was a cosigner with a pulse. I went back to my email. I opened the static folder. It had been accumulating unread messages for months. Most of them were junk. A few guilt-tripping emails from Mom that I hadn't read, but one email caught my eye. It had arrived 3 days ago. The sender was DocuSource Verification Services. The subject line was Authorization Needed. Parker Trust Amendment. Phase 2. I had never heard of DocuSource. It wasn't the usual DocuSign or Adobe Sign. It looked like a smaller, perhaps less rigorous, third-party service. I clicked on it. Dear Harper, we are attempting to finalize the filing for the Parker Family Trust modification as requested by the grantor. We have received the initial signatures, but we are missing the notary affidavit for the beneficiary waiver. Please click here to verify your identity and complete the packet. Beneficiary waiver. I sat back. A trust amendment. A beneficiary waiver. A loan based on my credit. The pieces slammed together in my mind. Easter wasn't just a canceled dinner. It wasn't just about them being tired. Easter was the deadline. They needed to get the loan. To get the loan, they probably needed to show the bank that the house was secure in a trust, to put the house in the trust, or to modify the trust to allow the loan. They needed all beneficiaries to sign off, or, and this was the thought that made my blood freeze, they needed me to waive my rights as a beneficiary so they could borrow against my future inheritance without my consent. They had canceled Easter because if I had come to dinner, I might have asked, "Hey, what is this notification on my phone?" Or I might have seen the paperwork on the sideboard. They needed me absent so they could be present as me. They needed Harper the ghost to sign the papers so Harper the person wouldn't read them. I looked at the picture of the dog again, Maple, sitting in my chair. Blessed with my whole world, my mother had written. She wasn't just being mean. She was being literal. Her whole world was the people who were playing along, the people who were helping her get what she wanted. I was not part of her world. I was just the resource she was mining to pay for it. I did not reply to the DocuSource email. I forwarded it to my personal secure archive. Then, I opened a new browser tab and searched for Forensic Accountants Denver. I wasn't going to call Mom and scream. I wasn't going to text Grant and demand an apology. I had spent 4 months letting the erosion happen, watching my place in the family wash away into the sea. I had let them think I was gone, but the thing about erosion is that it exposes the bedrock, and my bedrock was made of something much harder than they realized. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the accountant. "Hello?" I said when the receptionist answered. "My name is Harper Parker. I believe my identity has been used to secure a mortgage on a property I do not own, and I have reason to believe there is a trust fund fraud in progress. I would like to hire someone to track the paper trail." "Of course," the receptionist said. "Who are the parties involved?" I looked at the photo of the happy family in the cabin. "My parents," I said, "and my siblings." The silence on the other end was brief but heavy. "I see," she said. "We can help you with that." "Good," I said, "because I am done being a beneficiary. I am ready to be a creditor." I hung up the phone. The sun was setting over Denver, casting long shadows across my apartment. I was alone. I was 34. I had no Easter dinner, no birthday calls, and no seat at the table, but I had the truth. And in my line of work, the truth is the only asset that matters. Doctor. Naomi Kerr did not have a comfortable couch. She had two stiff, upright armchairs upholstered in a scratchy gray fabric that discouraged slouching. Her office in Lodo did not smell like lavender or vanilla. It smelled like old paper and filtered air. She did not ask me how my week was. She asked me about systems. "Imagine a mobile," she said during our third session, holding her hands up in the air, fingers splayed. "You know, the kind you hang over a baby's crib. It has balance, it has counterweights. If you cut one string, the whole thing spins wildly until it finds a new center of gravity. Your family is a mobile. Harper, and for 30 years, you were the lead weight at the bottom, keeping it from spinning out of control." I looked at the diploma on her wall. "So I am just gravity?" I asked. "No," she said, her voice dry. "You are the stabilizer, and now that you have cut the string, they are spinning. They are not excluding you because they hate you. They are excluding you because they are dizzy. They are trying to find a balance that does not require your mass." I liked Dr. Kerr. She did not offer me tissues. She offered me architectural diagrams of my own dysfunction. She helped me codify a new operating principle, one that I wrote on a sticky note and pasted to my bathroom mirror. No one gets the benefit of my presence for free. For years. My presence had been a commodity I gave away. I showed up early. I stayed late. I listened to the complaints. I absorbed the anxiety. I was the emotional sponge that soaked up the spill so the Parker family table always looked clean. No more. I began to reclaim my territory. Starting with the 600 square feet of my apartment, I had lived in this unit for 4 years, but it was arranged for guests who rarely visited. The sofa was facing the television because that was how Grant liked to watch football when he crashed on my couch. The dining table was pushed against the wall to make room for a hypothetical party. I spent a Saturday morning moving everything. I pushed the sofa to the center of the room, facing the window with the view of the mountains. I pulled the table out and set a single placemat at the head. I bought a rug that was impractical and cream-colored, the kind of rug you do not buy if you are worried about your brother spilling beer on it. I started cooking, real cooking, not the meal prep containers of grilled chicken and broccoli I used to make to save time for family obligations, but intricate, time-consuming recipes. I made a saffron risotto on a Tuesday. I roasted a chicken with 40 cloves of garlic on a Thursday. I sat at my table, alone, with a glass of wine that cost $20 a bottle, and I ate slowly. The silence in the apartment changed. It was no longer the silence of absence. It was the silence of sovereignty. I was not waiting for the phone to ring. I was busy living in the quiet, to fund this new regime. I took on a side project. I found a gig through a former colleague, analyzing supply chain logistics for a local startup called Greenroot. They needed someone to clean up their messy data sets and predict shipping bottlenecks. It was tedious work, staring at rows of numbers for 3 hours a night. But it paid well. I opened a new high-yield savings account at a bank my parents had never heard of. I nicknamed the account the Exit Strategy. Every time a payment from Greenroot hit, I transferred 100% of it into that account. I watched the balance grow. $2,000, $4,000. It was not just money, it was insulation. It was the ability to say no without fear of financial fallout. But the biggest change was the Thursday nights. For years, Thursday night was reserved for just in case. Just in case Mom needed help with her computer. Just in case Sienna wanted to vent about her relationship. I kept the slot open. Now, I filled it. I joined a trivia team at a brewery 3 blocks from my apartment. I found them on a community app. They were looking for a history and geography nerd. I showed up wearing a blazer, feeling like I was walking into a job interview. The team consisted of a software engineer named Ben, a librarian named Sarah, and a guy named Mike, who wore a hat that said, "Birds are real." They called themselves the Quizzards of Oz. "Do you know the capital of Burkina Faso?" Ben asked me before I had even sat down. "Ouagadougou," I said automatically. "You are hired," Mike said, sliding a pitcher of IPA toward me. It was disorienting. I sat there for 2 hours, answering questions about 80s pop music and periodic table elements. No one asked why I was single. No one asked about my credit score. No one made a passive-aggressive comment about my weight or my job. When I got an answer right, they high-fived me. When I got one wrong, Sarah just shrugged and said, "I thought it was Helsinki too." It was a community. It was small, and it was based entirely on the accumulation of useless facts. But it was mine. I didn't have to earn my seat by signing a loan. I just had to know that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I also met Mrs. Russo. She lived in 4B, 2 floors down. I had nodded to her in the elevator for years, but I had never stopped. I was always rushing to Foxridge. One evening, coming back from a run, I stopped to pet her corgi in the lobby. "His name is Barnaby," she said, smiling. "He likes your shoes." "He has good taste," I said. "I am going to grab a coffee at the corner," she said. "You want to walk with us? Barnaby needs to show off his strut." I hesitated. The old Harper would have said, "I have to check my email." The new Harper looked at the dog, a dog that was not sitting in my chair at a family dinner, and said, "Sure." We walked for 20 minutes. We talked about the construction on 3rd Avenue. We talked about the weather. It was mundane. It was low stakes, and it was refreshing. Mrs. Russo didn't know I was the family scapegoat. She just thought I was the nice woman from 6A who ran with a decent stride. I was building a life, brick by brick, without their mortar. And of course, that is exactly when the sensors on the Parker family mobile started to trip. It started with the softening texts. My mother was the master of the non-apology reach-out. She would never address the conflict. She would just bypass it with aggressive normalcy. "Saw these cute placemats at Target today," she texted on a Wednesday morning, attaching a photo of lemon print fabric. "Thought they would look great on your table. Miss your face." I looked at the text. Miss your face, not miss you. Miss the visual of me. Miss the prop. I did not reply. 2 days later, a link from Grant, article about interest rates dropping. "Thought of you. Hope you are killing it at work." He was testing the water. He was throwing a pebble to see if the monster would surface. I archived the message to the static folder without opening the link. Then came the escalation. It was a Tuesday afternoon. An email popped up in my work inbox. My actual work inbox. Not the personal one I had filtered. Grant must have looked up my corporate directory address. Subject: Family Update. Summer Brunch. The body of the email was written in that overly enthusiastic, exclamation point heavy style that Grant used when he was trying to sell a timeshare. "Hey Harper, long time no talk. The fam is missing our risk expert. We are planning a big end-of-summer brunch to get everyone back on the same page. Mom is making her famous quiche. We really need the whole crew there. It has been way too long. And we have some exciting updates to share about the house and Sienna's wedding plans. Plus, we need to take a new family photo for the holiday card. Yes, Mom is planning it already. Haha. Sunday the 24th. 11 o'clock. Be there or be square. Love. Grant P. S. Mom says please bring the good champagne. I stared at the screen. The audacity was almost impressive. We need to take a new family photo. That was the key. That was the hook. They didn't need me for the quiche. They needed me for the JPEG. They had likely realized that the photo of the dog in my chair, while satisfyingly cruel in the moment, did not play well with the extended network. People might ask questions. Where is Harper? Is there a rift? Why is the family not complete? For a family that ran on image, a missing daughter was a liability. It suggested failure. It suggested drama. They needed the visual evidence of unity to smooth over the cracks in the foundation. Cracks I now knew were filled with fraudulent loan applications. And the updates about the house? That was code. That meant the loan had cleared, or it hadn't, and they needed a signature. I did not reply. I treated it like a phishing scam. I deleted it. 3 days passed. I came home from work on a Friday. The air in the hallway was cool. I unlocked my door, dropped my keys in the bowl, and saw the mail pile on the floor. There was a thick cream-colored envelope sitting on top of the utility bills. It was heavy, the kind of paper stock you use for wedding invitations or legal summons. I picked it up. My name was handwritten in calligraphy on the front. Ms. Harper Parker. It was my mother's handwriting, but she had tried to make it look professional. I turned it over. The return address was just the Parkers. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and slit the envelope open. Inside was a card with gold foil edging. Graham and Lorraine Parker cordially invite you to an afternoon of family friends, celebrating the engagement of Sienna Parker, Evan Miller, and the renovation of the Parker family home. Sunday, August 24th, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Fox Ridge Estate. Formal attire requested. I held the card in my hand. It was not a casual come over for brunch anymore. This was a production, but what caught my eye was a small, separate card tucked into the envelope. It was an index card, handwritten in blue ink. Harper, please arrive by 11:30 for photos before the guests arrive. We need the full family portrait for the announcement in the paper. Wear the blue dress. It matches the theme. Also, please plan to stay a few minutes after to sign the witness forms for the house title update. It is just a formality. Love, Mom. I laughed. A single, short bark of a laugh that echoed in my sovereign apartment. There it was, the transactional sandwich. Layer 1. The photo, the image, the proof that they were a perfect family. Layer 2. The signature, the witness forms, the fraud. Layer 3. The social pressure, the guests, the audience that would prevent me from making a scene. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They weren't asking for a relationship. They were sending me a call sheet. Arrive at 11:30, wear blue, smile, sign here. They thought I was still the stabilizer. They thought that after 4 months of silence, I would simply snap back into place because the mobile was spinning and they needed gravity. I walked over to my desk. I placed the invitation next to my laptop. I looked at the date, August 24th. I looked at my exit strategy account balance, $5,400. I looked at the number for the forensic accountant I had saved in my contacts. I wasn't going to wear the blue dress. I sat down and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. I wasn't writing an acceptance. I was writing a script. If they wanted a performance, I would give them one. But it wasn't going to be the one they wrote. I picked up my pen. Part 7, I whispered to the empty room. The rehearsal. But first, I needed to make sure the audience was ready. I took a picture of the invitation, specifically the handwritten note about the house title update, and I uploaded it to the secure cloud folder I had shared with the forensic accountant. Then, I sent a text to Mrs. Russo. Hey, are you and Barnaby free for a walk? I need to practice my strut. I was not going back to Foxridge to make peace. I was going back to check the locks. And this time, I was bringing my own keys. I opened the browser on my phone. I pulled up the digital RSVP page linked in the QR code on the fancy invitation. There were options: joyfully accepts, regretfully declines, dietary restrictions. I selected joyfully accepts. I did not add a note. I did not add a smiley face. I did not text my mother to say, "Coming!" I just let the data packet fly through the ether, a silent confirmation that the prodigal daughter was returning to the fold. They would read this as surrender. They would think the 4 months of silence had done their job, that I had been starved out, that I was lonely, that I was desperate to be included in the whole world of the Parker family table. They would think I was coming back to be the dutiful prop in their blue dress photo op. They were wrong. I was not coming to pose. I was coming to collect evidence. The RSVP was merely the Trojan horse. Now that I was inside the city gates, or at least scheduled to be, I needed to understand exactly what they were building inside the fortress. I spent the next 3 nights not sleeping, but hunting. The internet is a terrifying place if you value privacy, but it is a goldmine if you are a risk analyst with a chip on your shoulder and the patience to navigate county clerk websites. I started with real estate records. These are public, usually free, and shockingly detailed. I navigated to the Fox Ridge County Assessor's portal. I typed in Graham and Lorraine Parker. The entry for the family home popped up. 3,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, built in 1998. I clicked on the History tab. There was the original mortgage from 20 years ago. There was a refinance from 5 years ago. I remembered that. They had used the money to redo the kitchen. And then there was a new entry, Deed of Trust. Grantor, Graham Parker, Lorraine Parker, Lender, First Mountain Bank. Date recorded, April 10th. April 10th. I checked my calendar. Easter was on March 31st that year. The canceled dinner was 10 days before this document was recorded. I clicked on the document image. It cost $5 to download. I paid it without blinking. The PDF opened. It was a home equity line of credit, or HELOC, a second mortgage. The amount was staggering, $150,000. I stared at the number. $150,000. My parents were not poor, but they were famously cash poor and house rich. They lived on pensions and Social Security. Why did they need that much cash? The invitation had mentioned a renovation, but the house didn't need a $150,000 renovation. The roof was new. The kitchen was done. Unless the money wasn't for the house. I looked at the fine print. The loan was secured by the primary residence. Yes, but there was a cross-collateralization clause referencing a business purpose. I switched tabs. I went to the Secretary of State's business entity search. I typed in Parker. Hundreds of results. I narrowed it down. Grant Parker. There it was. Parker Strategic Ventures, LLC. Filing date, March 15th. Status, active. Registered agent, Grant Parker. The timeline was aligning with the precision of a planetary eclipse. March 15th. Grant starts a new company. March 31st. The family cancels Easter to avoid me asking questions, while simultaneously engaging in a high-stress family meeting about finances. April 10th. My parents take out a massive second mortgage to fund, presumably, Parker Strategic Ventures. But here was the catch. Here was the variable that didn't fit. My parents had decent credit, but they were retired. Their debt-to-income ratio would be high. To get $150,000 out of their house at a decent interest rate, they would need a guarantor. They would need someone with a strong income stream and a pristine credit history to lower the bank's risk profile. Me, I went back to the butt dial transcript I had typed out. Grant. Did she sign that paper yet? Mom. She signs whatever I put in front of her. Grant. If that loan doesn't clear by the 1st, we have a problem. They had needed me to co-sign. That was the plan. But I hadn't been there. I hadn't signed. So how did the loan clear on April 10th? I felt a cold shiver walk down my spine. It wasn't the air conditioning. It was the realization that there were only 2 possibilities. Option A. They found another way, and the witness forms they wanted me to sign at the party were just clean-up paperwork. Option B. They forged my signature back in April, got the money, and now the bank was asking for a notarized confirmation or an updated modification, the house title update, to catch the discrepancy before an audit. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. I needed to look closer at my own data. I logged back into the credit monitoring service, the premium version this time, the one that costs $30 a month and shows you everything, down to the digital breath on your file. I had already seen the hard pull from March, but I went to the section labeled Account Review Inquiries, also known as soft pulls. These are the checks that don't hurt your score. They happen when a company you already have a relationship with checks to see if you are still a safe bet. I scrolled down. First Mountain Bank. Date, May 2nd. Date, June 15th. Date, July 30th. I did not have an account at First Mountain Bank. I had never banked there. A bank you do not do business with has no legal reason to perform a soft pull on your credit unless they think you do business with them. They were monitoring me. The bank's automated system was checking my credit health every 30 to 45 days. This meant my social security number was active in their system, attached to a live file. I wasn't just a potential cosigner. I was already in the mainframe. I printed everything: the deed of trust, the LLC filing, the credit report log. I put them in a red folder. I labeled it Evidence. The next morning, I took a half day off work. I didn't go to the police, not yet. I went to a glass building on 17th Street to see a man named Elias Thorne. Elias was a civil litigation attorney recommended by the forensic accountant. He looked like a man who had seen everything and was impressed by none of it. He wore a gray suit that was expensive but rumpled, and he drank tea from a mug that said, "I am silently correcting your grammar." I laid the red folder on his desk. "I am not asking you to sue anyone yet," I said. "I just want to know where I stand." He put on a pair of reading glasses and flipped through the papers. The silence in the office was broken only by the sound of pages turning and the distant hum of traffic. He stopped at the deed of trust. He stopped at the credit report. He looked up at me over the rim of his glasses. "You say you did not sign this loan?" "I did not." "And you did not authorize this LLC to use your name or credit?" "I did not." "But," he tapped the paper with a manicured finger, "the bank seems to think you are involved. A soft pull implies an existing permissible purpose under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They believe you are a customer." "So my parents forged my signature," I said. It wasn't a question. "It is highly probable," Elias said. "Or, they used a power of attorney you may have signed years ago without realizing it. Or they simply applied online where a digital signature is easy to fake if you have someone's social security number and mother's maiden name, which, considering they are your parents, they have." He leaned back, clasping his hands. "Here is the situation. Ms. Parker, if you report this as fraud right now, today, the bank will freeze the funds. They will launch an investigation. Your parents could face criminal charges. Bank fraud is federal. It is not a slap on the wrist. It is prison time, or, at the very least, massive fines and the loss of their home." I stared at the bookshelf behind him. Prison. My mother in an orange jumpsuit. My father in handcuffs. It seemed abstract, impossible. "I don't want to put them in jail," I said quietly. "I just want out. I want my name off everything. I want my credit clean. I want to be untethered." "To do that," Elias said, "you need leverage. You need them to admit it and refinance the loan without you, which they probably cannot do. Or they wouldn't have used you in the first place. Or you need to force the bank to release you by proving you never signed." He paused, and then he asked the question that stopped my heart. "Harper, look at me." I met his gaze. His eyes were gray and serious. "You are 34 years old. You have a good job. You are responsible. You are the perfect candidate for a silent partner in a fraud scheme because you are unlikely to check." "I am checking now," I said defensively. "Yes, but my question is this. Do you think this is the first time?" I blinked. "What?" "Fraud usually isn't a one-off event," Elias said gently. "It is a habit. It is a solution to a problem. If they felt comfortable using your identity for a $150,000 mortgage in April, they likely felt comfortable using it for smaller things before. A utility bill when you were in college? A credit card you didn't know about? A car loan in your name that they paid off, so you never noticed?" The room seemed to tilt. I thought about the mystery bills I sometimes got in college that my dad said were clerical errors and told me to throw away. I thought about the time I was denied a store credit card when I was 22 because of insufficient history, even though I thought I had history. "If you pull this thread," Elias said, "the whole sweater might unravel. You might find out that your financial life has been their safety net for a decade. Are you ready for that?" I sat there for a long time. I thought about the dog in my chair. I thought about the invitation to the party where I was supposed to sign witness forms. "They want me to sign something on Sunday," I said. "They called it a house title update." Elias nodded. "That is the cleanup. The bank probably flagged the file. Maybe the digital signature looked shaky, or they need a wet signature, a real ink on paper signature, to finalize the securitization. If you sign that document on Sunday, you are ratifying the fraud, you are accepting the debt, you are telling the law. Yes, I agreed to this. And if I don't sign? Then the loan might be called. The house of cards falls. I stood up. I took the red folder back. Thank you, Elias. What are you going to do? He asked. Are you going to confront them? No, I said. Confronting them gives them a chance to lie. They are good at lying. They are professionals at emotional manipulation. If I walk in there and scream fraud, my mother will cry. My father will clutch his chest, and Grant will tell everyone I am having a breakdown. I will look like the crazy daughter ruining the engagement party. I walked to the door. I put my hand on the knob. I am not going to make a scene, I said. I am going to make a record. I left his office and walked out into the blinding Denver sun. The decision had been made. I was not going to be the victim who begged for an explanation. I was not going to be the prosecutor who demanded justice. I was going to be the mirror. I spent the rest of the week preparing. This wasn't a family reunion anymore. It was an undercover operation. I went to a specialty electronics store. I bought a small, high-fidelity voice recorder that looked like a USB drive. It could record for 20 hours on a single charge. I contacted Mara Vance. She wasn't just a photographer. She was an old acquaintance from college who had pivoted to photojournalism before settling down in wedding photography. She had an eye for the truth. I don't want posed shots, I told her on the phone. I mean, take the posed shots. Sure, make them happy. But I am hiring you separately. I want the candid moments. I want the moments when the smile drops. I want the whispering in the corner. I want the look on my mother's face when she thinks no one is watching. You want a documentary of a disaster, Mara said. I want documentation of reality, I corrected. I will pay you double your day rate, but the files come to me first, not them. Done, she said. Finally, I prepared the outfit, the blue dress. I took it out of my closet. It was a royal blue sheath dress, elegant, conservative, the kind of dress a good daughter wears. I hung it on the back of my door. They wanted a prop. They wanted a signature. They wanted to use my credit to fund Grant's business and secure their retirement, all while treating me like a ghost. Elias had asked if I was ready for the sweater to unravel. I looked at the red folder on my desk. I wasn't just going to pull the thread. I was going to bring a pair of scissors. I wasn't going to flip the table and scream. That was what a child did. An adult. A risk analyst. A woman who had rebuilt herself in the silence. Did something much more terrifying. I was going to walk into that room, drink their champagne, smile for their cameras, and turn on the lights so bright that they would have nowhere left to hide. I stood before the full-length mirror in my hallway, adjusting the lapels of my dress. My mother's note had requested the blue dress. She likely meant the soft, cornflower chiffon number I had worn to my cousin's baby shower 3 years ago. A dress that made me look harmless, malleable, and sweet. Instead, I had chosen navy. It was a structured blazer dress, tailored to within an inch of its life, with sharp shoulders and gold buttons that gleamed like military insignias. It was blue, technically, but it was not the blue of a summer sky. It was the blue of a bruising storm. I wore 3-inch stilettos that clicked with authority on my hardwood floors. My hair was pulled back into a severe low bun. I wore no jewelry except for a watch. I checked my purse. The small, high-fidelity voice recorder was tucked into the interior pocket, its tiny red light taped over with black electrical tape. Recording silently, I checked my phone. It was 11:25 in the morning. The note had said, "Please arrive by 11:30 for photos." I picked up my keys. It was a 20-minute drive to Fox Ridge. If I left now, I would be late. Perfect. I did not want to be part of the staged family-only photos. I did not want to give them the chance to corner me in the kitchen before the witnesses arrived. I would arrive when the audience was already seated. I would arrive on my own terms. I walked out the door. leaving the soft, submissive daughter they expected back in the apartment she no longer inhabited. I pulled up to the house at 12:12. Exactly 12 minutes late for the party, and 42 minutes late for the photo session. The Foxridge estate looked like a page torn from a lifestyle magazine. My parents had gone all out. The driveway was lined with expensive SUVs. A valet stand had been set up near the mailbox. Through the wrought iron gate, I could see the backyard transformed. There were string lights zigzagging across the lawn. Even though it was high noon, creating a canopy of festive geometry. There were white linen tables scattered around the pool. There was a flower wall, a massive, dense rectangle of white roses and hydrangeas, serving as a backdrop for photos. A jazz trio was playing something inoffensive and upbeat near the patio doors. It was beautiful, it was expensive, and I knew exactly who was paying for it. I handed my keys to the valet, a teenager who looked terrified of my car's paint job. I walked up the driveway, my heels striking the pavement with a rhythmic, audible cadence. I stepped through the gate. The conversation in the yard didn't stop, but heads turned. I was not the ghost they had expected. I was not the sad, moping spinster in a frumpy dress. I looked like I had just arrived from closing a merger in Manhattan. My mother was the first to spot me. She was standing near the flower wall, holding a glass of champagne, laughing at something Mrs. Gable was saying. When she saw me, her smile froze for a fraction of a second, a glitch in the matrix, before reassembling into a mask of overwhelming, theatrical delight. "Harper!" she cried out, her voice pitching up to reach the back rows. "You made it!" She rushed toward me, arms wide, forcing the guests to part like the Red Sea. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that looked suspiciously bridal for an engagement party that wasn't hers. She collided with me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders in a hug that was less an embrace and more a restraint. She squeezed hard, her fingers digging into the fabric of my blazer. It was a hug designed for the spectators. It said, "Look, we are close. Look, she is here. We are a happy family." "You are late," she hissed into my ear, her voice dropping 20 decibels so only I could hear. "We missed the light for the portraits." "Traffic," I said, not hugging her back. I stood stiffly, letting her bounce off my armor. She pulled back, beaming at me with dead eyes. "Well, you are here now. And look at you. So, professional." She smoothed the lapel of my blazer, her hand lingering near the fabric as if testing its quality. "I thought you would wear the chiffon. This is a bit severe, isn't it?" "I came straight from a meeting," I lied smoothly. "You know how busy I am." Right, she said, linking her arm through mine and turning me toward the crowd. "Everyone, look who is finally out of her cave. It is Harper." My father, Graham, approached next. He was holding a scotch, his face flushed with the heat and the alcohol. He didn't hug me. He extended a hand, his grip firm, shaking mine like we were concluding a negotiation. "Good to see you. Harper," he said. His eyes didn't meet mine. They scanned the crowd behind me, checking the perimeter. "Glad you could make time for us." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "Nice party. Dad, must have cost a fortune." His jaw tightened. "We wanted to do something nice for your sister. You know how it is. Family first." "Family first," I repeated, my voice dry. Then came the siblings. Grant materialized from the crowd, wearing a linen suit that was trying too hard to be European. His smile was blinding, a wall of white teeth designed to dazzle and distract. "Harps," he boomed, coming in for a side hug that I deftly sidestepped. "There she is, the risk master. I was just telling Evan about your job. I told him you are the scariest person I know." "You should be scared, Grant," I said, smiling a razor-thin smile. He laughed, but the sound was nervous. He patted my shoulder a little too hard. "Always a joker. Go grab a drink. The bar is open." And finally, Sienna, the bride-to-be. She was standing near the buffet, looking delicate in lace. When our eyes locked, she didn't smile. She flinched, She looked down at her shoes, then at her fiancé, then anywhere but at me. The guilt was radiating off her in waves. She knew. She knew about the loan. She knew about the lies, and she was too cowardly to look the victim in the eye. I didn't approach her. I let her simmer in it. I scanned the perimeter and found Mara Vance. She was dressed in all black, blending into the shadows near the band. She held a camera with a massive lens. When she saw me, she gave a nearly imperceptible nod. I walked over to her, pretending to examine the jazz trio. "How is the lighting?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "Harsh," Mara said, snapping a picture of my father draining his glass. "But the subjects are interesting. Your mother has fixed her hair 6 times in the last 10 minutes. Your brother is sweating, and it is not 70 degrees yet." "Keep shooting," I said. "I don't want the posed smiles. Mara, I want the moments in between. I want the whispers. I want the glances." "I got a great shot of your sister looking like she is at a funeral," Mara murmured. "Consider it done." I moved away from her. Grabbing a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray, I began my infiltration. I circulated through the party like a shark in a koi pond. I was polite. I was charming. I asked Mrs. Russo, who had been invited, surprisingly, how Barnaby was doing. I complimented my aunt on her hat. I did not mention Easter. I did not mention the silence. I let them bring it up. And when they did, I deflected with a vagueness that made them uncomfortable. "We missed you at the holiday," my Uncle Bob said, chewing on a shrimp skewer. "Your mom said you were working on some big secret project." "Something like that," I said, taking a sip of water. "I have been doing a lot of auditing." "Auditing?" Bob laughed. "Sounds boring." "You would be surprised," I said. "It is amazing what you find when you actually look at the books." I moved on. I found myself standing near a large potted fern, slightly obscured from the main seating area. My mother was standing 5 feet away, her back to me, talking to Mrs. Gable and another woman I didn't recognize. I stood still. I focused my attention on the audio. "She looks good," Mrs. Gable was saying. "I thought you said she was having a hard time?" "Oh, she puts on a brave face." My mother sighed. It was a heavy, martyred sigh. "But you know Harper, she is complicated. She has always been a bit unstable. We have to be very careful with her. Very flexible." "Flexible?" the other woman asked. "Financially? Emotionally?" My mother lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "We have had to help her out more than she would like to admit. That is why we are refinancing, actually, to make sure there is a safety net for everyone, even the ones who don't appreciate it." My hand tightened around my glass until I thought the crystal might snap. The narrative was breathtaking. Not only had they stolen my identity to get the loan, but they were now telling people that the loan was for me. They were painting themselves as the benevolent saviors bailing out their unstable daughter, using the very crime they committed against me as proof of their charity. It was genius. It was evil. I stepped out from behind the fern. "Mother," I said. She jumped, her hand flying to her throat. She spun around, her eyes wide. "Harper, you startled me." "I have that effect," I said. "I am going to say hello to Evan." I walked away before she could recover, leaving her standing there with her mouth slightly open. I didn't need to argue. I had the recording. I made my way toward the bar, but before I could get there, a hand grabbed my elbow. It was Grant. He steered me away from the crowd, toward a quiet corner near the garage where the catering staff was stacking empty crates. "Hey," he said, his voice dropping the party persona. "Can we talk for a sec?" "We are talking," I said, pulling my arm from his grip. He looked around to make sure we were alone. He took a sip of his drink, likely something stronger than beer. "So," he said, trying to sound casual, "you are still at Crescent Vale, right?" "Yes." "And things are good? Stability-wise?" "Very good." "That is great. That is really great." He licked his lips. "And the salary? They treating you right? You got that bump you were talking about last year?" I looked at him. He looked desperate. His eyes were darting around my face, searching for data. Why do you ask, Grant? Just curiosity, brotherly concern, you know. With the economy and everything, it is good to have a solid income. High six figures, right? Is that a question for me or for the loan officer? I asked. He froze. What? You are asking about my income like you are filling out a form, I said. Do you need to verify my employment, Grant? Or did you already do that? You are being weird, he said, forcing a laugh. I am just making conversation. Jesus, Harper, you are so paranoid. Am I? I took a step closer to him. I was wearing heels, which put me almost at eye level with him. Tell me about Parker Strategic Ventures. Grant, how is the startup going? His face went pale. All the blood drained out of it, leaving him looking like wet dough. How do you... he stammered. Who told you about that? Public records are public. Grant, I said softly. March 15th. Nice timing. It is. It is just a side project, he stuttered, backing up a step. Mom and Dad are investing. It is a family thing. A family thing, I repeated. Funny. I don't remember being invited to the board meeting. You are not an investor, he snapped, his defensive anger flaring up. You are just helping out. Helping out, I said. Is that what you call it? Look, he hissed, leaning in close, his breath smelling of bourbon and fear. Don't ruin this today. Mom is happy. Sienna is happy. Just sign the paper later, okay? It is just a formality. It just keeps the rate locked. Don't be a bitch about it. I looked at him. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip. I looked at the brother I had once defended on the playground. I am not going to ruin anything, Grant, I said. I am just here to celebrate. I turned and walked away, leaving him shaking in the shadow of the garage. I walked back to the main patio. The sun was dipping lower, casting long, golden shadows across the lawn. The guests were seated at the round tables. Waiters were pouring champagne for the toast. My father stood up at the head table. He tapped a spoon against his glass. If I could have everyone's attention, he boomed. The crowd quieted. We are so blessed today, he began, to have our friends, our neighbors, and our wonderful children all here together. Sienna, Evan, we are so proud of you. And Grant, thank you for organizing this beautiful setup. He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. He landed on me. I was standing near the edge of the patio, holding my water glass like a weapon. And Harper, he added, almost as an afterthought. It is good to have the whole flock home. There was a polite ripple of applause. Speech, someone shouted. It was Mr. Gable. He was drunk. Let the sister speak. My mother's face went rigid. She shook her head slightly, a microscopic motion meant to signal no. But the crowd picked it up. Speech, speech, I smiled. I walked to the center of the patio. I took the microphone from the jazz singer, who looked confused. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence stretch. I looked at my mother, whose knuckles were white as she gripped the tablecloth. I looked at Grant, who was staring at his shoes. I looked at Sienna, who was holding her breath. Thank you, I said. My voice was clear, steady, and amplified. It is interesting to be back here, I began, to see the house looking so beautiful, to see the family, exactly as it is. I paused. I saw my mother flinch. We talk a lot about value in this family, I continued. We talk about assets. We talk about credit. We talk about what we owe to each other. The air in the yard shifted. It grew thinner, sharper. The guests sensed that this was not a standard wedding toast. But today, I want to propose a toast to something that doesn't have a price tag, something that you cannot borrow, and you cannot forge. I raised my glass. I looked directly at the camera lens of Mara Vance, who was crouching perfectly in the aisle, capturing the terror in my mother's eyes. To truth, I said. I let the word hang there. especially the kind of truth that people try to edit out of the picture. May it always find a way to the surface. I drank. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't the warm silence of agreement. It was the stunned silence of a room that had just seen a ghost walk through a wall. "Cheers," I whispered. I handed the microphone back to the singer. I didn't look at my family. I didn't wait for the applause, which came late and scattered. I walked back to my spot near the edge of the shadows. The game had changed. They thought I was there to sign a paper. They thought I was there to be a prop. But I had just told them, in front of everyone they tried to impress, that I knew the script. And I wasn't reading from it anymore. The party wasn't over, but the cover-up was. I did not drop the microphone. That would have been theatrical. And I was done with theater. I simply handed it back to the jazz singer, who took it with the confused expression of a man who had just witnessed a hostage negotiation disguised as a toast. The silence on the patio was physical. It was a heavy, humid blanket that smothered the polite chatter of the guests. My mother was staring at me, her mouth a tight, pale line. Grant was looking at the ground, his face the color of raw dough. I did not wait for the applause. I did not wait for the cake cutting, and I certainly did not wait for the witness forms that my mother had tucked into her purse. I turned around and walked toward the gate. "Harper?" my mother's voice called out. It was a strangled sound, pitched high to sound like concern, but I could hear the jagged edge of panic underneath. "Harper, where are you going? We haven't taken the full group photo yet." I did not stop. I did not turn around. I raised my hand in a vague wave that could have been a goodbye or a dismissal. "I have an appointment," I said to the air. I walked down the driveway, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the asphalt. The valet saw me coming and scrambled to get my car. He brought it around, my sensible, paid-off sedan sitting amongst the least luxury SUVs. I got in. I locked the doors. I drove away. Leaving early is a power move that people underestimate. When you storm out, you create a scene. When you simply vanish, you create a void. I knew exactly what was happening in that garden right now. My mother was frantically trying to spin the narrative. She was telling Mrs. Gable that I wasn't feeling well, that I had a migraine, that I was overwhelmed by the crowd. But the void was there, the empty space where the daughter should be, the empty chair at the table. I had given them exactly what they had forced on me at Easter, an absence. The only difference was that this time, I had chosen it. I went home. I poured a glass of wine. I took the small voice recorder out of my purse and connected it to my laptop. I saved the file as foxridge_toast.wav. Then, I went to sleep. The next morning, Monday, I was back at my desk at Crescent Vale by 8 o'clock. I was reviewing a compliance report for a mid-sized logistics firm when my personal email chimed. Sender: Mara Vance Photography. Subject: Your gallery is ready. Fox Ridge event. I took a sip of my coffee. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. I clicked the link. Mara was worth every penny of her double rate. The gallery opened with the standard shots. The flower wall, the appetizers, the band. They were technically perfect, bright and airy, but as I scrolled down to the candid folder, the one Mara had password protected just for me, the tone shifted. These were not photos. They were X-rays. I scrolled slowly, analyzing each image like it was a crime scene photo. There was one image that made me stop breathing for a second. It was taken at the exact moment I had arrived. I was walking up the path, blurry in the foreground but unmistakable in my navy blazer. In the background, in sharp focus, was my mother. She was smiling at Mrs. Gable, teeth gleaming, head thrown back in laughter, but her body was turned. Her left shoulder was raised, creating a physical barrier between her and my approaching figure. It was a subconscious rejection caught in high definition. The caption could have been, "The wall." I clicked to the next one, Grant and Dad. They were standing near the garage, away from the party. Grant was holding a blue folder. I zoomed in. It was a legal folder, the kind used for closing documents. He was whispering something to Dad, his face contorted in stress, a vein bulging in his neck. Dad looked tired, his eyes cast down. But the kicker was that Grant was smiling. His mouth was shaped into a grin for the benefit of anyone watching, but his eyes were dead with panic. It was a mask slipping in real time. I clicked again. Sienna, my little sister, the bride. She was standing near the buffet. She was looking across the lawn, directly at me, off camera. Her expression was unguarded. It was sorrow. It was guilt. Her mouth was slightly open, as if she were about to call out. But on her wrist, there was a hand, my mother's hand. It wasn't a violent grip. It was a gentle, restraining touch. 2 fingers resting on Sienna's forearm, just above her engagement ring. A subtle, elegant command. Stay. It was the most violent photograph I had ever seen. I downloaded the folder. I didn't edit them. I didn't crop them. I didn't add filters to make them look moody. The reality was moody enough. I created a new album on a private photo-sharing site. I titled it, Easter Season, Unfiltered. I uploaded 12 photos, the one of Mom turning her back, the one of Grant's panic grin with the folder, the one of Sienna being restrained, a shot of the dog, Maple, sitting in a chair while a guest stood next to it, a shot of my father drinking alone, looking at the ground, and finally, a shot of me during the toast. I looked dangerous. I stood straight, the glass raised, my expression calm and terrifyingly lucid. I went to the share settings. I typed in the email addresses. Mom, Dad, Grant, Sienna. I hovered over the add message box. I thought about writing. This is what you look like. I thought about writing. I know about the loan. I thought about writing. Sign this. I deleted all of it. Explanation is a form of negotiation. I was done negotiating. I hit send. The digital packet traveled through the fiber optic cables, landing in 4 different inboxes simultaneously. I went back to my work. I analyzed risk. I assessed liabilities. The reaction time was 22 minutes. My phone vibrated. Mom. Harper? What is this? I did not reply. Mom. Why did you send these pictures? They are terrible. I look like I'm sneering in that one. And why is Grant sweating so much? This is not funny. She didn't see the guilt. She didn't see the conspiracy. She saw the aesthetics. She was upset because the mask looked ugly, not because the face beneath it was corrupt. Mom. Harper, take this down. If you post these on Facebook, I will be very upset. They are unflattering. You are making the family look cold. Cold. She was almost there. She was staring at the truth and calling it a lighting problem. I swiped the notification away. An hour later, an email from my father. Subject: the photos. Harper. I received the link. I am not sure what point you are trying to make. We are a family. Families have stress. Families have bad angles. We should be focusing on the positive aspects of the gathering, not nitpicking moments of tension. We missed you when you left early. Grant had some paperwork for the house that we needed to discuss. Please call me, Dad. Focusing on the positive. It was the same corporate language he used to use when he fired people. We are restructuring for growth. We are pivoting. He was trying to manage me. He was trying to smooth the edges of the jagged reality I had just handed him. I moved his email to the static folder. Grant didn't text. Grant was smart enough to know that anything he wrote could be used as evidence. Grant was likely calling his lawyer, or the bank, or both. I went home that evening feeling a strange sense of lightness. I had held up the mirror. They had looked into it and complained about the frame. I made dinner. I listened to a podcast. I sat in my sovereign apartment, surrounded by the peace I had purchased with my own silence. At 10:45 at night, my phone buzzed again. I looked at it, expecting another barrage from Mom. It wasn't Mom. It was a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized the area code. Sender. Unknown, Evan Miller. Hey Harper, it is Evan. Sienna gave me your number a while ago. I stared at the screen. Evan, the fiancé, the golden retriever of a man who played golf with my father and laughed at Grant's jokes, the man who was marrying into the syndicate. The bubbles appeared. He was typing. Then he stopped. Then he typed again. I saw the photos. Sienna showed me the link. I waited. She is crying. She won't tell me why. She just keeps saying she is sorry. I sat up straighter on the couch. Harper, do you know what they are doing? With the business? With the house? My heart gave a single, hard thump. I was in the kitchen when you left. I heard Grant talking to your dad. He said something about the collateral walking out the door. Collateral. They had referred to me as collateral. Not family, not sister, asset, security, collateral. Evan typed one more message. I feel like there is something very wrong here, and I don't want to marry into a crime scene. Can we talk? I looked at the message. This was the crack in the dam. This was the loose thread Elias had warned me about. My family had calculated everything. They had calculated my credit score. They had calculated my silence. They had calculated the social pressure of the party. But they had failed to calculate the one variable that always destroys a conspiracy, the conscience of a stranger. I picked up the phone. I didn't text back. I opened my contact card for Elias Thorne, my attorney. I copied the number. Then I pasted it into the text thread with Evan. I know exactly what they are doing. I typed, and you are right. It is not a marriage. It is a merger. If you want to know the truth, call this number tomorrow morning. He is my lawyer. I pressed send. The mirror had done its work. The reflection was breaking. And now, the glass was about to start falling. Evan Miller looked like a man who had seen a ghost in the machinery. We met at a coffee shop on the far side of town, a place with industrial lighting and loud espresso machines that drowned out quiet conversations. He was wearing his golf shirt from the weekend, but it looked rumpled, as if he had slept in it. He didn't order a drink, he just slid a piece of paper across the metal table. It was a printout, standard copy paper, slightly crinkled at the corner. I found this in the printer in Grant's home office, Evan said, his voice low. I went in there to look for a charger during the party. It was in the output tray. He must have printed it and forgot to grab it. I looked at the document. It was a draft, a messy marked-up draft of a loan guarantee agreement for Parker Strategic Ventures. There were red pen marks circling certain clauses. But my eyes went straight to the bottom of the page. There was a line for primary borrower, Grant Parker, and below that, a line for cosigner/guarantor. Typed neatly on that line was a name, H. Parker, and next to it, a date, March 31st. I felt the air leave the room. March 31st, Easter Sunday. I looked up at Evan. This is dated Easter Sunday. I know, Evan said. I checked the calendar too. The puzzle pieces did not just click together. They slammed into place with the force of a car crash. For months, I had agonized over why they canceled dinner. I had wondered if I had offended them. I had wondered if they just didn't love me enough to set a place at the table. I had thought it was an emotional rejection. I was wrong. It was a logistical necessity. They didn't cancel Easter because they were tired. They didn't cancel Easter because of a deadline. They canceled Easter because they were holding a board meeting to finalize the theft of my identity. And they couldn't very well have the victim sitting there passing the deviled eggs while they practiced forging her signature. The butt dial made perfect, horrific sense now. Did she sign that paper yet? Grant wasn't asking if I had physically signed it. He was asking if the forgery was complete. He was asking if the H. Parker asset had been successfully attached to the loan application they were filling out over the ham and potatoes. They used me, I whispered. They didn't just exclude me. They managed me. They needed me to be a ghost so they could use my name without my face attached to it. Evan rubbed his face with his hands. I asked Sienna about it last night. After you left, I asked her what H. Parker meant. And? She threw up, Evan said. She literally ran to the bathroom and threw up. She wouldn't talk. She just kept crying and saying that her mom said it was for your own good, that they were protecting your assets by investing them. Investing them, I repeated. By putting a $150,000 lien on a house I don't own to fund a startup that doesn't exist. Harper, Evan said, leaning forward, I cannot marry into this. I love her. But this is a felony. Yes, I said. It is. I took the paper. Thank you. Evan, you did the right thing. What are you going to do? I am going to close the account. I left the coffee shop and drove straight to Elias Thorne's office. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist saw my face and buzzed me straight through. I laid the paper on his desk. March 31st, I said. The day of the butt dial, the day they canceled dinner. This is the smoking gun. Elias looked at the document. He didn't look surprised. He looked grim. This establishes intent, he said. And it establishes conspiracy. This wasn't a mistake. It was a planned event involving multiple parties. I want to send the letters, I said. Now. We will do more than send letters, Elias said. We are going to drop the hammer. That afternoon, we launched the offensive. First, we sent a formal demand for verification to First Mountain Bank, attaching an affidavit of identity theft. We flagged the March 28th inquiry and the April 10th loan origination. We demanded the original loan documents, specifically the signature pages, and the IP addresses used for the digital signing session. Second, we placed an extended fraud alert on all 3 of my credit bureau files. This meant that no one, not even me, could open a new line of credit without a verbal password and a phone call to my personal cell. But Elias wasn't done. If they have been doing this for a while, he said, we need to scrub the history. We need to look for the sleeper accounts. He had his paralegal run a comprehensive background search, the kind that goes deeper than a standard credit report. It looks for utility connections, check systems reports, and public records linked to my Social Security number. We sat in silence while the system churned. 20 minutes later, the paralegal walked in with a single sheet of paper. We found something, she said. She placed it in front of me. It was a utility account for a cable and internet provider. The service address was my parents' house in Foxridge. The account had been open for 7 years. The account holder was Harper L. Parker. I stared at the paper. 7 years. I was 27 then. I was living in my first apartment on the other side of the city. Why? I asked, my voice trembling. Why put the cable in my name? It is $100 a month. They could afford it. Maybe they had a dispute with the provider, Elias said. Maybe they forgot to pay a bill and got blacklisted, so they used your fresh credit to open a new account. Or maybe, he paused. Maybe it was a test, I finished, to see if I would notice. I hadn't noticed. For 7 years, my parents had been using my name to watch television and surf the internet, and I had never known because they paid the bill on time. It wasn't about the money, it was about the ownership. They believed my name was a community resource. They believed my identity was a spare key they could pull out of the drawer whenever they locked themselves out of their own creditworthiness. It was a violation so small and yet so profound that it made me want to scream. It proved that the Easter loan wasn't a desperate, one-time lapse in judgment. It was a lifestyle. Add it to the file, I said. Send the cease and desist. Send everything. By 5 o'clock that evening, the digital courier notifications confirmed that the letters had been delivered to my parents' email addresses and to Grant's business email. The reaction was instantaneous. I was driving home when my phone started to seize. It buzzed. Then it buzzed again. Then it started ringing. Mom, Dad, Grant, Mom. I didn't answer. I watched the names flash on the screen like emergency warnings. I got home and put the phone on the kitchen counter. It vibrated across the granite surface, a relentless, frantic insect. The voicemails started rolling in. I played the first one on speaker. Harper! It was my mother. She was crying. Not the polite, sniffly crying she did at weddings. This was ragged, hyperventilating, sobbing. Harper, we just got a letter from a lawyer. What is this? What are you doing? They are saying they are going to freeze the accounts. You are going to get your father arrested. Call me back right now. We did this for you. We did this for the family. I deleted it. Second voicemail. Dad. Harper. His voice was shaking with rage. You pick up this phone. You do not send legal threats to your parents. Do you hear me? You are ungrateful. You are acting like a petulant child. Grant explains that this is a temporary liquidity bridge, and you treat it like a federal crime? You are embarrassing this family. Call me. I deleted it. Third voicemail. Grant. Hey, Harper. Look, don't freak out. I think there is a misunderstanding with the bank. The lawyer thing is a bit much. Don't you think? We can fix this. I can pay off the loan. I just need a few months. If you freeze it now, the whole deal collapses and I lose the startup. You don't want that, do you? You don't want to be the reason I fail? Just call me. Let's work this out. Please. He sounded terrified. For the first time in his life. Grant sounded like a man who was watching the ground rush up to meet him. I didn't delete that one. I saved it. It was an admission of guilt. I can pay off the loan. He knew it existed. He knew he was on the hook. I sent a single text message to the group chat, the Parker family chat that had been silent since Easter. All communication goes through Elias Thorne. Do not contact me directly. Then I blocked them. All of them. It was a violent act of digital amputation. I cut off the limb to save the body, but I wasn't done. I sat down at my kitchen table with a stack of documents Elias had given me. If you want to be truly independent, he had said, you need to make sure that if something happens to you, they don't get a cent, because right now, as your next of kin, they inherit everything. I opened the folder labeled Estate Planning. I picked up a pen. I began to draft the outline of the Harper L. Parker Revocable Trust. I listed my assets, my condo, my 401k, the exit strategy savings account, my life insurance policy. Then I reached the section for beneficiaries. I wrote down the name of a nonprofit organization I had researched, the Estrangement Project. It was a group that provided legal and mental health support for adults who had severed ties with toxic families. I assigned 100% of my estate to them. Then, I turned to the section labeled Disinheritance Clause. Elias had told me I needed to be specific. If I just left them out, they could argue it was an oversight. I had to name them. I had to acknowledge their existence and then reject it. I wrote, I, Harper Parker, intentionally and with full knowledge, omit to provide for my parents, Graham and Lorraine Parker, and my siblings, Grant and Sienna Parker. This is not a mistake. This reflects the nature of our relationship. I stared at the words. This reflects the nature of our relationship. It was the truest sentence I had ever written. The nature of our relationship was theft. The nature of our relationship was silence. The nature of our relationship was a one-way transaction that I had finally closed. I signed the page. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was the feeling of setting down a heavy backpack after hiking for 30 years. I went to the fridge and poured a glass of water. My phone buzzed again. A text message. It wasn't from a blocked number. It was from an email address sent to my phone. A workaround they had found. From Graham, Parker@gmail.com, subject. Emergency meeting. Harper. Enough games. The bank called. They are flagging the account. We are having a family meeting tonight at 8, at the house. You need to be there to sign the affidavit that this was a misunderstanding. Or your brother goes to jail. Do not be late. I looked at the clock. It was 6:30. They were summoning me. They were calling the asset back to the warehouse for repairs. They thought that by threatening me with Grant's imprisonment, they could bully me into submission one last time. They thought that if they got me in that room, surrounded by the history of the house, surrounded by their shouting and their tears, I would crumble. I would revert to the stabilizer. I looked at the text again. Or your brother goes to jail. It wasn't a request. It was a hostage situation. And the hostage was their reputation. I walked to my bedroom. I opened my closet. I took out the navy blazer. I wasn't going to go there to sign their affidavit. I wasn't going to go there to save Grant. I was going to go there to deliver the trust documents. I was going to go there to look them in the eye and tell them that the bank wasn't the only one flagging the account. I was going to go to the meeting, but I wasn't going alone. I texted Elias. They called a meeting for 8 o'clock. I am going. He replied instantly, "Do not sign anything. I will meet you in the driveway." I grabbed my keys. The canceled Easter dinner had started this. The emergency meeting would end it. I walked out of my apartment. I didn't look back. The Harper who used to wait by the phone was gone. The Harper who was driving to Foxridge now was a creditor coming to collect. And the currency I was demanding was the one thing they couldn't afford to pay. The truth. The driveway of the Foxridge estate was dark when I arrived. There were no string lights tonight. There was no jazz trio. There was only the oppressive silence of a house that knew it was under siege. I did not park my car. I idled at the gate until a pair of headlights appeared behind me. It was Elias Thorne. He stepped out of his car, carrying a black leather briefcase that looked heavy enough to contain a body. He adjusted his tie, nodded to me, and we walked to the front door together. I did not knock. I used my key. The key they had forgotten to take back. We walked straight to the dining room. They were all there. It was a grotesque reenactment of the Easter dinner I had missed, except there was no food on the table. There were only stacks of legal notices, and a silence so thick you could choke on it. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother was to his right, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Grant was pacing near the window. Sienna was sitting with her head in her hands when I walked in with Elias. The air shifted. "Harper," my father said. His voice was not welcoming. It was a low growl. "You brought a stranger into this house?" "I brought my counsel," I said, pulling out the chair, my chair, and sitting down. Elias remained standing behind me, a silent sentinel in a gray suit. "Since you threatened my brother with jail time via text message, I figured we had moved past the family chat phase and into the criminal defense phase." "It is a misunderstanding," my mother cried out. She reached across the table, trying to grab my hand. I pulled it back. "Harper, please, why are you doing this? We are your parents. We only wanted to secure the future. I was trying to keep the family afloat. I took the burden on myself so you wouldn't have to worry." "You forged my signature on a federal loan application," I said. "That is not taking a burden. That is taking a felony." "It was a bridge loan," Grant shouted from the window. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot. His linen suit wrinkled. "It was temporary. Harper, I was going to pay it off in 6 months. You would never have known. Why do you have to be so forensic about everything? Why can you not just trust us?" "Trust you?" I asked. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I placed it in the center of the polished mahogany table, face up. "You want to talk about trust? Let's talk about Easter." "We told you," my mother said, her voice trembling. "We were busy. We were stressed." "No," I said. You were working." I pressed play. The audio was crisp. The silence of the room amplified every sound coming from the tiny speaker. Clink of silverware. My father's voice. "Bless this house. Keep us united." Laughter. And then, Grant's voice, clear as a bell. "Did she sign that paper yet?" My mother's voice. "She signs whatever I put in front of her. I am handling Harper." Grant. "If that loan doesn't clear by the 1st, we have a problem." I let the recording play until the sound of them eating the ham filled the room. Then I hit pause. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. My mother's face had gone the color of ash. Grant had stopped pacing. My father was staring at the phone as if it were a bomb. "You didn't cancel dinner because you were tired," I said, my voice steady. "You canceled dinner because you couldn't have the victim sitting at the table while you conspired to rob her. You needed me gone so you could become me." "It wasn't robbery," my father spat, slamming his hand on the table. "It is family assets. Everything we have is shared. You ungrateful girl. We paid for your college. We paid for your braces. You owe us." "I owe you respect," I said. "I do not owe you my credit score. And I certainly do not owe you $150,000 for a shell company." I nodded to Elias. He stepped forward and opened his briefcase. He slid a single document across the table toward Grant. "This is an affidavit," Elias said. His voice was calm, professional. and terrifying. It states that Harper Parker did not sign the loan documents dated April 10th. It states that her signature was forged without her knowledge or consent. It demands the immediate removal of her name from the deed of trust and the Parker Strategic Ventures, LLC. If I sign that, Grant whispered, looking at the paper with horror. The bank calls the loan. They will seize the capital. My company goes under. That is preferable to the alternative, Elias said, which is that we file a police report for identity theft and wire fraud. In that scenario, the company goes under, and you go to federal prison for 5 to 10 years. You wouldn't, my mother gasped. She looked at me, eyes wide with betrayal. Harper, he is your brother. You wouldn't put him in a cage. I am not putting him anywhere, I said. You put him there. You put him there the moment you taught him that my name was yours to use. You put him there when you decided that I was not a person, but a resource. I reached into my bag again. I pulled out the photos, the unfiltered collection. I fanned them out on the table like tarot cards. The photo of Mom turning her back on me. The photo of Grant sneaking the legal folder. The photo of the dog in my chair. Look at them, I said. Really look at them. This is what you were doing while you were protecting me. You were erasing me. You replaced me with a golden retriever because the dog doesn't ask questions about mortgage rates. Sienna let out a sound. It was a sob that had been building for an hour. I told them to stop, she choked out. Everyone turned to look at her. Sienna, shut up, Grant hissed. No, Sienna stood up, tears streaming down her face. I am not shutting up. I knew, okay? I knew. Mom told me on Easter morning. She said they had to do some creative accounting and that Harper wouldn't understand because she is too rigid. She told me to keep my mouth shut or the wedding budget would disappear. She looked at me, her face crumbling. I am so sorry. Harper, I wanted to tell you, but they said it was for the family. They said if I told you, I would be ruining everything. You did ruin everything, Grant yelled at her. You are weak. Both of you are weak. He turned to me, his face twisted in a sneer. The mask of the charming brother was gone. There was only the desperate, entitled narcissist underneath. You think you are so special? He shouted. You are nothing. You are a mid-level analyst with a boring life and a condo you probably paid too much for. We gave you purpose. We gave you a role. You should be thanking us for including you in something big, instead of whining about signatures. The air in the room seemed to freeze. There it was, the truth. I am nothing, I repeated softly. And yet, you needed my signature to survive. I stood up. Grant is right about one thing, I said. I am a risk analyst, and I have analyzed this situation. The risk of remaining in this family is 100%. The return on investment is 0. I looked at the affidavit in front of Grant. You have 5 minutes to sign that, I said. If you don't, Elias files the police report on his way out the driveway. Grant looked at Dad. Dad looked away. The patriarch had crumbled. He knew there was no blustering his way out of a paper trail this thick. With a shaking hand, Grant picked up the pen. He signed the document. Elias took it immediately, checking the signature. He nodded to me. We are done here, Elias said. Not quite, I said. I pulled out my phone one last time. I opened my email app. I just sent you all an email, I said. It contains a copy of my new estate plan, drafted this morning. My mother looked up, confusion warring with her misery. Estate plan? I have created a revocable trust, I said. All of my assets, my condo, my savings, my life insurance, have been transferred into it. The sole beneficiary is a non-profit organization that helps victims of financial abuse. I looked at my parents. And there is a specific clause, I continued. A disinheritance clause. It names Graham, Lorraine, Grant, and Sienna Parker. It states that under no circumstances are you to receive a single penny from my estate. Not now, not when I die. Never. Harper, my father whispered. You are cutting us out? Completely? You canceled dinner, I said. I looked at the empty table. I looked at the chandelier that I had helped pay for. I looked at the people who shared my DNA but not my values. You canceled dinner, I repeated. So I canceled access. I turned to Sienna. Good luck with the wedding, I said. I hope you signed a prenup. I turned to leave. Harper, my mother screamed. You cannot just walk out. What do we tell people? What do we tell the Gables? What do we tell the family? I stopped at the doorway. I looked back at them one last time. They looked small. They looked trapped in the amber of their own lies. Tell them the truth, I said. Or don't. I won't be there to correct you. I have my own table now. I walked out of the dining room. I walked down the hall where my graduation pictures used to hang. I walked out the front door and into the cool night air. I got into Elias's car. I did not look back at the house. I did not check my phone. As we drove away, down the winding streets of Fox Ridge, past the manicured lawns and the perfect facades, I felt a sensation I had not felt in 34 years. Silence, but this time, it wasn't the silence of being ignored. It wasn't the silence of waiting for a phone call that would never come. It was the silence of a ledger that had finally, perfectly, balanced. I was alone, and I was free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below and share your location. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed Harper's journey, please make sure to subscribe to the Lucy Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the like button so we can get this story out to even more people who might need to hear it.